The night had arrived with a ferocity that none of the 15 bikers had anticipated. The storm wasn't just snow, it was a relentless white wall, whipping across the empty highways and turning the world into an endless blur of white. Wind howled like an untamed wolf, shaking their motorcycles with each gust. Visibility was almost zero, and the freezing cold gnawed at every exposed inch of skin. They had been riding for hours, trying to reach the next town before the storm trapped them completely. But the roads were icy, the wind merciless, and the chains of misfortune seemed determined to challenge them. One biker, a tall man with a grizzled beard named Marcus, glanced at his companions through the swirling snow. His teeth chattered despite the layers of protective clothing. "This isn't just a storm, it's a trap," he muttered, voice barely audible over the wind. "We need shelter, now." Another rider, a younger woman named Lily, squinted at the horizon. Her eyes were red from the cold and exhaustion. "I think I see a light," she shouted, her voice carrying over the blizzard. The others turned, hope flickering for the first time in hours. Far off, a tiny glow shone like a candle in the dark, and against all odds, it seemed to promise warmth, safety, and a reprieve from the brutal night. The group pressed forward, their tires slipping and sliding across the snow-packed road. Every moment felt like a battle against nature itself. Finally, they arrived at a small house tucked away on a rise, almost hidden by the snow-laden trees. Smoke spiraled from the chimney, curling gracefully into the dark sky. The sight of it was almost miraculous. Marcus led the way to the door and knocked, the sound almost swallowed by the wind. Moments later, the door creaked open to reveal an elderly woman. She was small, hunched slightly, but her presence radiated warmth and strength. Her hair was silver, pulled into a loose bun, and her eyes sparkled with kindness that seemed to pierce through the storm itself. "Well, you've come at the perfect time," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "Come in quickly, before the wind bites you." The bikers stepped inside like men and women reborn. The warmth hit them instantly, wrapping around their frozen bodies like a comforting blanket. The smell of firewood and herbs filled the air, and the soft glow of lamplight made the small house feel like a haven in a world gone mad. The old lady guided them to the living room. There were no luxurious couches or grand fireplaces, just a humble room with a thick rug and a crackling hearth. But it was enough. Enough to thaw their frozen hands, enough to calm the wild beating of hearts that had raced through the storm. She handed them blankets and ushered them to sit down. "You must be starving," she said, heading to the kitchen. Soon, the house was filled with the comforting aroma of homemade soup and fresh bread. The bikers, who were used to protein bars and quick stops at diners, marveled at the simple feast. Lily whispered to Marcus, "She doesn't even know us. And yet, she's risking this storm to help strangers." Marcus nodded, a rare softness in his usually stoic expression. "That's the kind of courage we should all aspire to," he murmured while the bikers warmed themselves. The old lady moved with surprising energy for her age, clearing a corner of the living room to make space for their motorcycles. They had come prepared for the worst, but she seemed prepared for everything. Her hands moved with practiced precision, lifting heavy tarps and shifting gear with an ease that belied her years. The bikers tried to protest, insisting they would handle their own bikes. She simply smiled. "You've faced a storm, haven't you? Let me handle this part. You need to rest, or you'll freeze before morning." That night, as the wind shrieked outside, the small house became a sanctuary. Stories were shared by the fire. Marcus spoke of long rides through deserts and mountains. Lily shared tales of races she'd won and crashes she'd survived. Even the quieter bikers, normally reserved and wary, began to open up. The old lady listened to each story with rapt attention, occasionally offering a chuckle or a nod, making each rider feel seen and valued. In return, she shared fragments of her own life, a youth spent traveling the countryside, a love that had lasted decades, and the wisdom of someone who had faced many storms, both literal and metaphorical. The bikers realized that although she appeared frail, she possessed a strength forged through years of resilience and kindness. Hours passed. The storm outside raged on, yet inside, a sense of peace prevailed. Blankets were pulled tighter, mugs of soup were refilled, and the small fire continued to crackle. Every so often, one of the bikers would glance at the window, fearing the night outside, only to be reassured by the steady presence of their unexpected savior. As midnight approached, the old lady brought out extra quilts and insisted everyone get some rest. The bikers huddled together, sharing warmth, while their bikes rested safely under the makeshift shelter she had provided. There was a bond forming, a silent understanding that this night was extraordinary, not just because they survived the storm, but because they had encountered genuine human kindness before they drifted into sleep. Marcus approached the old lady. "We don't even know your name," he said, awe in his voice. She smiled, a twinkle in her eyes. "Call me Agnes," she replied. "And tonight, you are my guests. Tomorrow, when the storm ends, you'll go back to your roads. But tonight, you are safe. And that, my friends, is all that matters." Outside, the storm continued to howl, but inside the small house, the bikers slept soundly for the first time in what felt like forever. Unaware of the miracle that awaited them in the morning, they rested, hearts full of gratitude and minds at peace. Agnes's act of kindness had changed the course of their night, and perhaps, in ways they could not yet see, their lives. Little did they know, this single night of compassion would ripple far beyond the small living room and into the wider world, creating a story of loyalty, gratitude, and a bond that no snowstorm could ever break. Morning came slowly. The storm had finally subsided, leaving the town blanketed in a thick layer of sparkling snow. Icicles hung from tree branches, glinting in the pale light of dawn. Birds cautiously emerged from hidden perches, shaking snowflakes from their feathers. Everything seemed peaceful, almost magical, yet Agnes, the kind-hearted elderly woman, had no idea that the day ahead would turn her quiet life upside down. She shuffled toward the front door, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. Her bones ached from the long night, but her spirit was light. Last night's events replayed in her mind, the laughter, the stories, the warmth of the 15 bikers she had welcomed into her home. She felt proud, but also slightly apprehensive. She knew the storm had stranded many people, and wondered how her guests had fared during the coldest hours. Her hand rested on the doorknob, and she slowly pulled the door open. At first, she froze. The bright morning sun glinted off chrome and metal, and then the realization hit her like a thunderclap. Her modest driveway, which yesterday had been covered only in snow and silence, was now packed with motorcycles. Dozens of them. And then more. And more. Her heart raced as she counted. 1, 2, 3, nearly 100 bikes stretched along her driveway, their engines idling softly. Riders wearing leather jackets and helmets were lined up in neat rows, each one smiling, waving, or revving their bikes in a synchronized cheer. Agnes's breath caught in her throat. Before she could even speak, one of the bikers stepped forward. It was Marcus, the grizzled man who had led the group last night. He removed his helmet, revealing a grin that radiated mischief and admiration. "Good morning, Agnes," he said, his voice carrying over the crisp winter air. "We promised we'd return, and we weren't kidding." Agnes blinked, completely overwhelmed. "But, why? You're all strangers. Why would you do this?" Her voice trembled, equal parts astonishment and joy. "Because last night, you didn't just give us shelter. You reminded us what it means to care," Marcus replied. "Every one of these bikers heard your story. They heard your kindness. And we decided, some things deserve more than just a thank you." The bikers began dismounting from their motorcycles, moving quickly to clear her driveway and help with the snow. It wasn't just a symbolic gesture. They shoveled, scraped, and moved obstacles, turning her small, snowbound yard into a navigable path. Agnes watched, tears forming in her eyes, as strangers she had barely known worked tirelessly to make her life easier. One young biker named Lily approached her with a warm smile and offered her a thick scarf. "We thought you might need this," she said. "It's a small thing compared to everything you did for us last night." Agnes took it, her hands shaking. She could barely find words. I don't know what to say. I've never." She paused, unable to finish. The overwhelming emotion was almost too much. Marcus laughed softly, sensing her struggle. "You don't have to say anything. Just know this, we'll always remember what you did for us. And we're here now, because one act of kindness can spark a chain reaction. You started it, Agnes. You started something amazing." Then came the most surprising part. Each biker, one by one, began placing gifts at her doorstep. Warm blankets, bags of groceries, even supplies to repair parts of her old roof that had been damaged by the storm. It was as if the entire town's biking community had gathered overnight to shower her with gratitude. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the roar of engines and the unusual spectacle. Their eyes widened as they witnessed the scene, a small elderly woman standing in front of her house, surrounded by nearly 100 bikers paying homage to her kindness. Whispers of admiration spread quickly. "You did all this for strangers?" one neighbor asked in disbelief. Agnes nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I just helped them last night. I couldn't leave them out in the cold. That's all. But the bikers knew better. What she saw as a simple act of decency was, to them, a lesson in humanity. In a world so often focused on selfishness, Agnes's courage and generosity had reminded them that even the smallest acts of kindness could change lives and inspire loyalty stronger than any bond formed by blood. As the day progressed, the bikers stayed, helping her repair small damages caused by the storm, cleaning her driveway completely, and even clearing snow from her roof. The quiet, modest house seemed to transform under the flurry of activity. For the first time in years, Agnes felt the weight of loneliness lift, replaced with warmth, camaraderie, and a profound sense of belonging. By late afternoon, the bikers gathered for a final moment in front of her home. Marcus stepped forward once more. "Agnes, you've shown us something rare. You've shown us what it means to put others before yourself. We ride many roads, but last night, you reminded us that kindness is the strongest road of all." Agnes's lips quivered. She looked around at the bikers, all of them smiling, nodding, and waiting for her reaction. Her heart swelled. In that moment, she realized that the world wasn't as cold and harsh as she sometimes feared. People could surprise you. People could rise to the occasion. And, most importantly, good deeds could come back to you in ways you never imagined. One by one, the bikers mounted their motorcycles and started their engines. The noise was deafening, yet it felt like music to Agnes's ears. She waved, tears glistening on her cheeks, as the bikers formed neat rows and began riding off, their engines fading into the distance like the echoes of a beautiful dream. And just before the last bike disappeared over the horizon, Marcus shouted back, "Remember, Agnes. One act of kindness can never go unnoticed. You changed our night, and our lives." Agnes stood there long after they had gone, staring at the freshly cleared driveway, her heart full. She whispered to herself, almost in disbelief, all it took was a little warmth, a little kindness. From that day forward, her little house became legendary. The story of the elderly woman who sheltered 15 stranded bikers in a storm, and was rewarded by 100 returning the next morning, spread through the town and beyond. People came from far and wide, not for fame or spectacle, but to witness the house where kindness had sparked a miracle, and Agnes, sitting by her window with a cup of tea, would always smile. She knew now that even in the coldest winters, humanity could shine brighter than any storm, stronger than any wind, and warmer than any fire.